Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Welcome, everyone, to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight's show is live. I hope you brought your questions. This is where we talk about all things related to education and the people who are trying to make it better. Tonight's guest is no exception. This is a Dissident Dispatch. For those of you who've watched me for a while, you know that this show's a little different. We cover topics that are, quite controversial, and I try to either talk about them myself or have a guest who can address them. And tonight I am privileged to have with us California school teacher Ray Shelton. You may have seen some buzz about him on social media. I've posted quite a bit about him. He is a fifth grade teacher in Glendale, California. And recently he did two things that got him in hot water. He spoke on Dr. Phil and told the truth about biological sex. He also got up at his school board meeting, and in only 1 minute, they give you such a short period of time to talk. In 1 minute, he told the truth about biological sex. And he has since been put on administrative leave and is facing all manner of hate on the internet, including death threats. It's terrible. I'm going to let him tell his whole story to you, and I hope you have questions. I'm also going to talk to you about the use of Holocaust victimology. It was used against Ray. And I'm seeing it all over the place now on Instagram and social media, where you see teachers, not dissident teachers like Ray, but teachers who want to teach these subjects to our children, whining and complaining that they are the new victims and that this is Hitler all over again. And they're conjuring up Holocaust imagery and Holocaust, victimology, and placing themselves as the victims, themselves and their alleged students who are trans, that they are trying to protect, and making those of us who are criticizing them the new Nazis, which is, of course, offensive and twisted. So without further ado, please, before we get started, though, like and share this broadcast. Let's get everybody's eyeballs on this who want to see and hear from Ray and ask him questions. This is very important. You need to know there are brave people out there who are sticking up for you and your children. Ray, welcome to the broadcast. So happy to have you.
Hey, Deb. Good to see you. And hello to all your listeners and watchers. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm going to let you, in your own words, tell them what happened. And if at any time you want me to show them anything, I have some things teed up. I'm happy to go to it, or you can just tell. Or whatever.
Okay. All right. Well, I recently appeared on the Dr. Phil show, but you have to understand that show was actually taped almost a year ago.
Really?
Yes.
This felt so current.
So Dr. Phil's team is watching the news. And last year, there was a panel on transgender ideology, and the show focused on a mother who almost lost her daughter to the transgender ideology. Right. Her daughter, quote unquote, began to transition at school under a counselor, and the school kept this from the parent, and the parent only found out about it when some sort of note was sent home that had her daughter's new male name on it. So the show was really about her and her struggle with the school. Now, of course, the way Dr. Phil works is, he likes to have fireworks and sparks. So in contrast to her, he had a gentleman. Eli is his first name. Of course, he dresses and pretends that he's a girl. But they were the main focus of the show. Now, when you go on Dr. Phil, if you're the main guest, you are allowed to bring along 3 other people who automatically get mic'd up to support you or to add a new insight to the topic. So I was one of those invited guests. So we go into the show, we do the show, the focus is mainly on the mother and her daughter, which is where it should be. And whenever I got to speak, I always tried to be as clear and sharp and focused as I could, because I wasn't the main guest. And what began to happen quickly is that the entire room turned on me, which, you know, didn't bother me in the least. But the show ended. You know, it's taped. Obviously, it's taped. And the show ended. And then what normally would happen is the guests would leave, and the audience stays. And then whatever the next guest for the next show is comes in. And Dr. Phil said, you know, this is really getting interesting. How about we just keep going? How about we just tape a second show? And in the second half, he focused on me and the audience anger, rage, in fact. And so it never aired, you know, so he just put it in the can. And I suspect, right, Glendale, I mean, we're 10 minutes away from Burbank, which is where all the television shows are made. And I suspect that his team got a hold of what was going on locally in the news and then decided to air it. So if you want to give your audience a taste, the whole thing is on YouTube, obviously. Anyone can see the whole thing. Right. But if you have an exciting little tidbit, or if your audience wants to see me in action.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Let me pull this up. Now, the thing about it, let me see, get the share. The thing about this is because it's Gateway Pundit, it's like a small little thing, but you'll be able to hear it. Hold on a second. Let's get this. So they have all those goofy ads, which I don't care for, but here it is. Like, we have this ugly meat and all this, and I tried to make it bigger, but you know what happens if you click this, nothing happens. I apologize. Right. Let me see if I can get some of this closed up so that at least we don't have to look at raw meat, because that's kind of gross.
That's all that clickbait is terrible.
Yeah, it's just gross, and I had wanted to share it a different way, but it's not so fantastic. All right, let's see. Is that better? Okay, there's Ray. Okay, let's see what happens. If I can still click the controls. Why won't it let me? Oh, I see, because I have to go all the way down. There it is. All right.
And they got my name wrong, by the way. They called me Roy. So.
Yeah, they called him Roy. All right. Let me know in the comments if the sound is
okay. Only women menstruate.
But what about trans men and non-binary? We're excluding a whole group of people.
They're women dressed as men. You are not a man. You can pretend to be a man, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Live your life.
I'd like to understand from your perspective why you don't believe it's rude and why you think you have a right to, when someone identifies a certain way, for you to tell them that that is not correct, that they are that particular gender or identity.
Why do I feel that it's right to tell them the truth?
But it's not
true. The people who hate the truth, people who hate the truth are because they see the truth as hateful. If you want to identify in any way you can, you're free to do so. But that does not mean that the rest of us have to join that illusion.
If a transgender person is not harming you or the people you love, why do you care so much?
Because you want us to
what? No, I don't want you to care. I want you to be quiet. I want you to stop being hateful.
So let me answer. You disagree. I disagree with you, and so you call it hate. But there's no hate in my heart at all. So that's
you are being hateful when you tell somebody that identifies as a man that they're not a man.
That's not hateful. That's a fact.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah,
we're in the upside down world, and I
don't want you to care. I want you to stop talking. It's basically what she's saying. It's like, shut up. Wow, that's worse.
Yeah.
That's aggressive.
These people are highly manipulative. If you watch the entire show, you will watch master manipulators at work, because the topic of the show is not transgenderism. The topic of the show is transgenderism aimed at elementary school children. But this is the one thing they never mention. They always dodge to, if someone's transgender, why do you care? They always shift it away from the real issue that's under discussion. And the other thing is, it wasn't, I don't know if your audience heard, but she said, why do you care? And I said, because you want us to. And they do want us to. If they didn't want us to care, they would just go and live their lives. They wouldn't care. But
that's right.
I hope you notice the death stares behind me and on the other side. I mean, these people. If you watch the show, that woman with the curly hair, she is so disturbed mentally that I would be afraid to let her water my lawn. I mean, these people are disturbed seriously.
Well, even the blonde woman who said, do you not understand that it's rude? And she was like perplexed at your inability to understand how rude it is to tell someone the truth. And the reason I bring that up is that I watched, it was just the other day, also on Fox News, I believe, there was somebody talking to a woman, or maybe it wasn't Fox News, it was Dr. Phil. Sorry, it was also Dr. Phil. There was a woman who made herself blind. And she was sitting there talking to a doctor, or there was a doctor there on the panel. And the doctor said, I'm sorry, I just have to interrupt. We take an oath in our profession. And this is obviously a very disturbed person. I mean, she's sitting right next to the woman who made herself blind. And she is just hauling off with no holds barred on, this is a deeply disturbed individual who thinks, something that's not real, whatever. And I thought it was interesting because nobody stood up and said, in fact, the audience clapped. The audience is like, yes, tell the truth. Please tell the truth. Meanwhile, this woman who made herself blind, who I do have a lot of pity for, she's obviously deeply disturbed, is sitting right next to her. Nobody's going, do you see how rude it is that you are telling someone who believes something about themselves that that's not true? And I'm like, why is this the only thing?
Well, they don't actually believe you're being rude. All of this is just a manipulation to get you to feel intimidated. So they always want to climb on the moral high ground. Not that they believe there is a moral high ground, but when you're a benevolent person and you're an honest person, you're questioned, it's reasonable. It's reasonable to say, well, I wonder if they have a point, or, you try to take in consideration another person's point of view. That's what good people do when you're having a sincere conversation. So they use this. They use all of these techniques to attempt to get you to feel intimidated. Like, am I being rude? Or trying to make you look like a bad human being. That's the point. The point is to try to get you to look like a bad human being. And they are really, really good at it.
Well, speaking of getting people to look like bad human beings, when we think of bad human beings, one of the things we do think about are Nazis, right? And when you subsequently, obviously that was a year ago, I didn't even know that, when you stood up at the school board meeting, or when you were actually sitting in the audience prior to or after, I'm not really sure what the timing was, and you can tell the audience about that, you were holding in your hand a picture of the current pride flag. You have it with you? I think if you hold it up for a second, we won't get in trouble.
Okay.
I'm literally afraid to show it at this point.
No, don't be afraid at all.
I'm kidding.
So here is the current, the most up-to-date transgender gay pride flag, whatever.
Right.
And last year, a famous British actor, I don't recall his name at the moment, put up a meme in which he was trying to suggest that there was a similarity an ideological similarity between the transgender ideology and totalitarianism.
Right.
And he noticed that if you arrange this flag in a particular pattern, it
Right.
suggests a particular ideology. And
Yes.
he did this because he basically believes, the truth, that there are men and there are women, and you can't change your gender, and this is this is insanity. So this is the meme here. This is the meme itself.
Yes, that's the meme. These are just pride, just so it's clear to everyone. These are literally just pride flags.
Yes.
Arranged in a pattern. That's it. You just turn them a quarter turn, and this is what you get. Ray didn't make this. First of all, Ray didn't make this. Ray didn't make it up. When they designed the pride flag, they maybe should have thought about it. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Here it is. Here it is.
There it is.
There.
So they designed it that way with the chevron, and Ray didn't do that. So you were holding it in your hand,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And what happened next?
Well, I brought some materials to talk at the board on the assumption that I would have 5 minutes, because I didn't expect there was an enormous crowd. And if there's only a few speakers, they'll give you 5 minutes. So I brought some materials, some studies, some up-to-date studies, a recent one from Denmark, which tracked what used to be called transsexuals from 1973 to 2003.
Right.
So almost 30 years. And their main conclusion was that after surgery, the suicide rate skyrocketed by 300%.
Yep.
Also, that the majority of these people went on to become involved in crime of various sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what you would expect if someone was disturbed in the first place. Now, of course, you have to compare that to somebody who doesn't get surgery but still feels the same way. But in fact, and they did that, and in fact, the surgeries increased the suicide rate. So, and there were some other studies, and so this was just one of the things I brought along. I wasn't waving it around. I wasn't shoving it in people's faces.
No, as I saw in one picture, I mean, I think you had it on your lap.
Yeah, it was in my lap.
And someone asked you to hold it up.
Yes.
To show them what you were holding, and then like a setup. I mean, but
yes,
you didn't even know
setup.
It was a setup, and you held up the picture. They took your picture, and then proceeded to put all over social media. This is Nazi Ray, Ray teacher. He is a white supremacist, Nazi sympathizer, sitting with his Nazi friend, and whole threads came up of how you're a skinhead, you're a white supremacist, you're a neo-Nazi, you're, why Glendale, why are you still employing Nazis to teach in your class? It was like.
But again, it's to shut people up. They don't really believe any of it. Okay. This was, they don't actually believe any of it. This was done by a woman named Talene Arsenian, and a woman named Alicia Harris. They're both teachers here in Glendale. And I've known Talene for 20 years. So it's not like she doesn't know she's lying through her teeth.
Exactly.
But again, since I did not get the chance to explain that, first of all, it actually isn't a swastika. If you look at it carefully, it doesn't actually fulfill the shape of a true swastika.
No, it evokes one.
Yes, it suggests and it evokes, but it isn't actually a real swastika. But the implication is that the point of the meme, the point of the picture, is that the people who support the poisoning and mutilation of children share similarities with Nazism. Now, of course, if you took 10 seconds to think about it, you could figure that out. but that's not what they're interested in. They're just interested in smearing. They're interested in power. You know, I think in the first time I spoke with you, I said, when you go to a school board meeting, the first thing you must know is that every single thing they say to you is going to be a lie. And you also have to assume that their hearts are filled with malice. There's no benevolence between those soulless people sitting up there. And this is true also when you engage with these people. There is nothing there except pure, unadulterated hate and lust for power. They want to destroy. There's a lust for destruction in their hearts, and they will say and do anything.
But this is the part, when we talk like this, though, Ray, this is the part that people in the audience are like, do you really believe that? You really think so? And then, but we have to look at the evidence.
Yes.
So this isn't pure speculation. We're looking at the evidence. We're looking at their behavior. What is so ironic is that the people who want to say that a symbol on a piece of paper sums up Ray's intentions and his character, even though his actual behavior are contrary to that. The same people who want to say that, you know, just because you didn't use a preferred pronoun, that means all manner of things about you, they will turn around and expect you to ignore their actual behavior, to never assume an intention about them at all. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. How dare you assume our intentions? It's like, well, first of all, I'm not assuming. I'm literally extrapolating from repeated patterns of behavior, things that you say, lies that you tell. It's not a one-off. You take a piece of paper and you've summed up an entire person's life and meaning and purpose on this planet, and that's okay. It's baffling to me. So I ask you in the audience, if you were inclined, listening to Ray just a second ago, or listening to me, ever to think, well, don't you think that's a little hyperbolic? I would ask you to apply the same standard about whether someone's being hyperbolic to the people who are claiming Ray's a Nazi, to the people who claim that removing a book with graphic, pornographic, depictions of sex, some of which are between children and adults, that's book burning. It's book burning. It's the Nazis all over again. Who's being hyperbolic? Those of us who say they're lying gaslighters, colonizing the Holocaust to make you sympathetic to their cause.
Well, you have to remember that social change is always created and guided by a small minority. The larger population is always, they just follow. And I mean, they're too busy. You know, they have lives, right? They have children, they have spouses, they have work. And the activists don't have any of that. The activists have none of that. Their entire lives are trying to change the culture. So I'd like to share, is it all right, Deb, if I share a few headlines with you?
Absolutely.
Your audience may have seen these, they may have not. But if you're paying attention, this is what's going on in our country. And this is very serious. And again, the mainstream media is helping these people. So the first thing I wanted to show you was a headline. I don't know, does this show up here? Let's see.
Yeah, there you go. Transgender Minnesota lawmaker introduces bill removing anti-pedophile language from state's Human Rights Act.
Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. This is a quote unquote transgender activist who is seeking to remove pedophilia and have it reclassified as a protected class under the human rights laws of Minnesota. They want to make pedophilia a protected class.
Okay, now, pedophiles endangered by Nazis in 5, 4, 3, 2. I'm sorry. So, it's coming. You know it is. Just like Hitler.
So they're actively. So when you say they're not coming for your children, they are. Okay, they are coming for your children. And so here is Here's another lovely little thing. This happened just down the road from Glendale, outside in Riverside. This just happened a few days ago. Another one.
Giant transgender biomale student at Southern California High School assaults girl after exposing his genitals in girl's locker room. Video? I don't want to see that.
Okay, the video is video? The video. You laugh, right? The video is of the fight.
I'm sure, but I mean, the whole headline is utterly ridiculous, and it's not ridiculous because it's not true. It's ridiculous that there's a headline that exists that is like that.
So here is an enormous man. You know, he's a teenager, obviously, but he's enormous. He's going into the girls' locker rooms. He's exposing himself, and when the girls attempted to confront him on this, he attacks them. So again, just look at the behavior. This isn't about, I have an identity and I just want my privacy to go about living my life. This is about inflicting harm. Now, this is another one. We're
all trauma informed at these schools, just, so you know.
Okay.
Trauma informed.
And this was, again, just yesterday, I think.
Man convicted of raping. Oh, 7-year-old girl to be sent to women's prison after changing pronouns to she, her, thanks to A.G. Garland's policies.
So here is a rapist, a pedophile who has raped a girl, knows what's going to happen to him if he goes into a general population in prison. And so he says, I'm a woman. Now, that's all he says. That's all that happens. He just says, I'm a woman. And so now, under the new federal regulations, he must be transferred to a woman's prison, where again, of course, he will continue raping and molesting women. So, I mean, I could give you headline after headline after headline, and you would think that the mainstream media would pick this up, and they won't touch it. They won't touch it.
Yeah. Well, even if, there might be people saying, well, that's Fox News, or, well, that's an exaggerated headline, or, well, is it, like, how exaggerated does it have to be? Like, there's facts inside the article, and even if they've exaggerated some aspect of it, there's still the bottom line that A.G. Garland did change the rules. The only thing you have to do is say, my pronouns are she, her. That is fact. Therefore, the rest of it, what's not true about it? So this person was convicted of raping a girl, did say this, is now going to be transferred. Pick it apart for me. What's wrong? What are we saying that isn't true? I think the cognitive dissonance is so powerful. People see these headlines, even other reporters in the news are like, no, and they just aren't, they're trying to ignore it. Probably because they don't want to lose money, and it's about money. We know that there's a lot of money and a lot of very powerful billionaires who are behind these policies. If you follow the money, it takes you some dark places. But I also think it's just cognitive dissonance. I think there are a lot of people who just can't believe it, don't want to believe it, so they don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah, and until it happens to the daughter of someone who's extremely famous, until she's murdered, until the child of someone famous or a famous politician is murdered.
Right. Or raped or assaulted or in some other way victimized. Yeah.
Yeah. The rest of us are just the great unwashed. They don't care. They don't care if your daughter suffers. They don't care at all. That's not what they're interested in. And that's not what the school board's interested in either. They really don't care if your daughters or sons are hurt.
No.
They really are soulless. All you have to do is go to a few meetings and just look at their facial expressions. They don't smile really. They really, if you have any experience working with narcissistic sociopaths, you will recognize all of the markers right away, very quickly, in terms of how they speak to you, how they talk to each other. So this idea that they care.
There's a lot of money and power in the education space, tragically, I mean, as soon as it came under government control and as soon as they had access to the public purse, that was a given. That was always going to be the case. And now they want to expand that and make it even bigger with school choice, but I'm not going to go there. Anyway, but what you also will see, in addition to this kind of soullessness, or you gotta like, keep my supply. And the kids are really at this point a commodity to be traded. They are not seen as human. They're supply for people who have jobs, people who have money, people who have power. That doesn't mean that people like Ray don't exist. There are plenty of wonderful teachers out there who are facing what you're facing. They are either silent because they're afraid of losing their jobs, or they're just going to leave. Right? They're too new and they were idealistic and they got in and they said, woo, and they're going to disappear and you're never going to have heard from them.
Yeah. Can I interrupt just a second, Deb? Sorry if I am. This is the point you make there is very powerful. At my school site, I've been at my school site for 25 years. So I have seen, I'm not the most senior teacher. There's one other person who's been there longer than I have. So I've seen all the teachers come and go, and they all know me. They all come to me for help and for resources and for lessons and for guidance. And the truth is that I would say over half, certainly the ones who I've had discussions with, agree with me completely. And in fact, our principal has said to me privately that she also agrees with me. And yet none of them will say anything. And it's all because they want to keep their job. That's all it is. And this is actually how speaking of Nazis, this is actually how one of the techniques the Nazis used in terms of getting people to be quiet is they used the workplace, right, where you had to swear allegiance and various other things to support the National Socialist Workers' Party, which is what the Nazi is a shortening of the German word national and the German word socialist. So it's National Socialist. So it's Nazi. They use the workplace. And so even my principal, who broke the confidentiality of my being placed on leave, went out of the way to comment that hate speech and hate symbols had no place and so forth and so on. And yet she actually believes everything I do, at least on this particular. And she's a good woman. I mean, she's a good woman. She's a good administrator. I've always admired her. Yet she had no difficulty putting a knife in my back. That's right. To protect her job. So that's just the way it is.
That's just shameful, because as you've pointed out, if they put 10 more seconds into thinking about it, I don't care how you arrange the pride flag, according to them, the pride flag is not a symbol of hate. According to them, love wins, love is love, all these things, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you get that? And even this British person who put it together so that it evokes this image, even his purpose was not because he had Nazi sympathies. Mm-hmm. He was trying to convey the irony and the sort of subtext of this activist movement, that there's talking about love and acceptance and inclusion, while at the same time telling people, shut up, don't speak. It should be illegal for you to not call me what I want to be called, even when I'm not in the room. Yeah. That should be against the law. You should be able to be put in jail, even if I'm on the other side of town, because somebody heard you refer to me as the opposite of my biological sex. Like, what is more totalitarian than speech law, speech codes? The same people are saying, don't pull this book out of the library. Oh, they want to restrict your speech by law and put you in prison if you say the wrong words, or don't say the correct words. And so I'm sure, because I can spend 10 seconds thinking about it, that the person who put the symbol together was trying to get that message across, was trying to say, who are the totalitarians now? Right, and I'll be honest with you, I don't love that he did that. I mean, I think he's correct, but I'm an equal opportunity rejecter of using Holocaust imagery to, generalize, because I just think it minimizes. We shouldn't universalize the Holocaust, period. Right. I really don't think. That said, if we're going to say never again, and we're going to point out the footsteps of totalitarianism, we have to be able to talk about patterns. We have to be able to say, this is similar to the run up to that, but that's different than here's a symbol. Like, hey, they're just like,
right.
they're not just like it, but I think it is worth having a conversation to say what he really meant. In that sense, he's correct.
Right.
So it's very nuanced, and I know I get into details on this, but I never want to be like, this is all good or that's all bad. I think we really need to get better at taking things apart. But in no universe does the possession of that picture make the holder of the picture anything other than a holder of a picture.
Yeah.
You have to go deeper, and especially the context of Ray Shelton, all your years of experience. And it should be noted, if I may, that you're gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is kind of ridiculous, the whole thing.
Well, again, it's not, again, Talene knows this. And I have to say this in all fairness to Talene and Alicia Harris, two very unpleasant women, I should say, in person. But they didn't just call me a Nazi. If you watch the school board meeting, we had 18 parents get up and speak against the Glendale Unified School District's policies. In a private chat room, we obtained a screenshot, or I have obtained a screenshot. I have one in my possession. She goes on to talk about how everyone on that side of the room is a Nazi. She isn't. Now, these are Armenian parents mainly who suffered a genocide. And so she's a teacher in the district calling the parents of students that she may teach Nazis. Now, she did this behind a closed forum, and I won't say how we got access to it, but she referred to all of those people, all those parents, all those good parents, not just me, I mean, as Nazis. So this is truly evil. Now, I mean, it's pretty wicked, but and I agree with you, Deb. I do think we have to be very careful with not using the Holocaust for narrow political purposes. It was too an important event in human history. So I thought I would share with you my next flag. Now this one I didn't create either. You can give me your reaction, okay? Just you can tell me yes or no. If you say no, I won't use it.
No, that's okay.
You tell me. What do you think about this one?
It's just as good. That, and here's the thing. That one, I would be very curious if they have the same reaction about it being hateful.
Yeah, the communist Chinese killed far more people than the Germans did.
Well, I mean, that's it. That's why generalizing the Holocaust is such a dumb idea. I mean, but you're absolutely right. Communism killed more people. Now, that's not specifically Chinese because you'd have to have the 5 stars. But
okay.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, if you wanted it to be Chinese, you have to have the 5 stars.
Okay.
But if you I
didn't design it. I just downloaded it.
I'm just saying, if we're gonna pick nits, it's like, and now it's just communism. It's but that hammer and sickle, I really like, I see that and I feel the same feelings of anxiety that I see looking at a swastika, because I know the numbers just like you. But it's different in the sense, in this one sense. While if we single out the Chinese and the way they treated, the way they're currently treating Uyghurs and way they treated people who are not Han and things like that, or people were Han rather. And if we talk about in the Soviet treatment of the kulaks, okay, there's a sort of a racial component. However, the thing about the Holocaust that I find so much more compelling when we're talking about the trans movement in particular, and this is why I'm torn, because I don't want to generalize it, and I think it's offensive that they of all people are using it to refer to their critics. Because again, the more they do that, the more I think of similarities to the actual Nazis. And they were, the compelled speech is just the tip of the iceberg. Experiments on children, really horrific ones, to change what they were, their eye color, to change their hair color, to change their facial features, to sterilize them. So everything that we're doing as far as mutilation, sterilizing, you don't have blue eyes. Let's see if we can make a person's eyes blue using these experimental treatments, Dr. Mengele. Okay. This is what they were actually doing to make the right kind of person.
Right.
Right. And so while they might sit and tell you today, the trans activists, like, well, this is their choice and they want to make it. Is it though? I saw someone today say a trans kid is like a vegan cat. You know, somebody else is making the decisions. And so who's trying to make themselves, you know, when I see parents of children, adults, that's their business.
Yeah.
That's a bit. No one's experimenting on you without your full adult consent. All right. I might have an opinion one way or the other about it. It's really none of my business. But a child, no. And then we have to look at the parent or the teachers pushing it or the Planned Parenthood people pushing it, the doctors pushing it, whoever's pushing it, doing it, helping them. And how do you not see the similarities?
Yeah.
Right. But the difference is I'm not going to take that victimology and say, see, it's just like it.
Yeah.
But I'm responding to them saying when we won't let them do it, when we're saying, no, we are going to push for legislation to prevent you from doing this to children. They grab hold of that swastika and pointed at us. They grab hold of all the symbols of Holocaust victims, profess to be the victims. They're genocide. They want to genocide us out of existence.
Oh, yeah. And also, you know, so many things that you bring up, Deb, just from, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking of these dog food commercials that show the company adding blueberries and things like that. And I'm thinking, dogs don't eat blueberries.
Right.
Why would you want dog food that has blueberries in it? But this is entirely analogous to that. Now, again, your audience may not know that this is being pushed heavily. And this can lead into the topic of what you were talking about libraries, the issue of the phony issue of banning books. But I don't know if you've ever seen this book here.
Oh, I have actually, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this book is aimed. So I'd like your audience just to see the text so you can see the age. Okay. So this is aimed at 6 and 7 years old. This is not a complex text. This is a picture book meant for second, maybe third grade. Okay. And so she says she's not a girl. And you notice that she's watching a boy have a haircut. Okay. So, so at the end, when you get there she is. There she is. She's a boy now.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes, little 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whoever's reading this book or hearing about this book.
So now this book was placed in Mark Keppel Library. This is not the copy from the library. This is my own copy. Without parental notice, without parental notification of any kind. And if a child checked it out, nobody would say one thing or another. But they are targeting your children. It is not this innocent, you know, it's not, you know, the communist Chinese and Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan all focused on youth, and they all focused on having young children betray their parents and try to demolish the family. And just for your readers, and I mean, if you want to have nightmares, for the rest of your life.
I don't, but continue.
The Imperial Japanese did experiments on the Chinese with a particular unit. It's called unit. I forget the number of the unit. You can Google it. It is far, far worse than anything you could ever imagine happening in the communist or in communist Russia or Nazi Germany. But they all go for the children.
That's right.
And
well, it makes sense. I mean, there was Lenin, Hitler, Mao. They were all talking about that because it really does only take one generation. Our founders warned us of this.
Yeah.
You've got liberty if you can keep it, right? I mean, it's not something that you can ever take for granted because it's not the natural state of man.
Right,
And the natural state of man is poverty. The natural state of man is more like law of the jungle because the natural state of man is poverty. So you only thrive as a human being if you can, work in cooperation with other people who are willing to live, like to coexist peacefully with you. And that's not an automatic thing. That takes reason. It's so complicated, but we, especially in the West, I think we've been so prosperous and so peaceful in our own homes, not overseas. Okay. But that we've taken it for granted. Like, this is how it always is. And now because it was this way, it will stay this way. I noticed this when they start dumbing down the curriculum and dumbing down the grades and dumbing it down. I have to ask myself, do you think that you can just say you're a doctor or get a piece of paper that goes, you're a doctor now? Yay, you're a doctor. You can go operate. I'm not trying to be glib. The credentialing of people who are objectively not qualified to do their jobs is happening every day. It's happening every day. And it began, guess which profession? Teaching.
Yep.
I was credentialed as a teacher. I'm not saying I wasn't qualified to do the job, but I'm just saying that even I, in 1990, when I got my master's degree, and they also gave me my certificate, and I thought to myself what I had learned and so on, and who was next to me, like who were in my classes and who was out there with me. And I thought to myself, this isn't what I thought teachers would be like. Not that I was like the cream of the crop or anything, but I remember having teachers who were very, very good at their subject. So like the math teacher was an expert at math. The history teacher knew a lot about history or was like a history buff or whatever. And I was finding people I was in classes with who were like, they're the lowest of their schools and their scores of whatever. And I was like, maybe you shouldn't be teaching other people. They also weren't particularly mature. They were, there were a lot of things. And then, well, now keep going. If they're teaching your kid how to do the things that are going to grow up to do the things that are bigger than that.
Yeah.
And we can't give them a C. That would hurt their feelings.
Yeah. As you said, civilization is a small clearing in a deep and violent jungle. And if the people who inhabit that clearing don't work to keep the jungle at bay, then the clearing will disappear, and the clearing is disappearing. You can see it with all of in particular the violent crime in all the large cities. So the increasing rapidity, increasing violence,
and the callousness.
Yeah.
The callousness. So, what not just of the perpetrators, but people around the victims. So I just saw today a video of a woman right here in North Carolina, pregnant woman, 4 months pregnant. She went into a convenience store, past a group of youths who were standing in front of the ice machine outside the convenience store. She bought something. She came out. They approached her and said, give me your keys. I guess she tried not to give the keys or tried to go around them to her car. And they shot her several times. So she didn't even realize she'd been shot at first because she was in such shock. And then she tried to run to get away. The video inside the store picks her up coming into the store. She realized she was losing a lot of blood and she was feeling faint. So she lay down on the ground telling people, I've been shot. I've been shot. They tried to start the car, couldn't start it because the key had to be jiggled. It was the kind of key that still goes in, had to be jiggled. It didn't work. So they ran away. And the people you see in the video, the people inside the convenience store looking at her like somebody dropped a candy wrapper on the floor. And they just turned around and went on about their business until police came. Nobody in that store in that video offered her any aid or comfort, even kind words. She lost her baby. She's had multiple surgeries on her stomach. Thank God she lived. But, aside from just the crime, I was appalled at the behavior. Or you see people videotaping fights in a school.
Yeah.
And everybody's just standing around.
Yeah.
Nobody's even attempting to break it up, including adults.
Yeah.
You'll see adults walking by. And I'm just like, civilization falls apart. And even why did the Nazis come to power? Like, how did that happen? Because of all the people who did nothing, said nothing, didn't stand up when they were just a small band of thugs.
Yeah.
So I get the impulse amongst people who are sort of only half paying attention to like jump on the bandwagon with the supposed underdog and say, why are you banning books? That's terrible. You shouldn't be doing that. That's what Nazis did. But they're not really looking at who are really doing the bad things, the compelled speech and the kicking you out of your job and all this kind of stuff. They've just got it backwards, right? I get the impulse, but they've got it all backwards.
Yeah, part of that is on our side is not driving home as often as we can certain conceptual distinctions that are critical. So not purchasing a book is not banning a book.
That's right.
Not organizing a curriculum is not banning a book. Organizing a library is not banning a book. Only the government can ban books. Private citizens not purchasing isn't banning it. So this whole talk of books being banned is complete nonsense. And we have to, at every turn, whenever people bring that up, we have to say, look, if your library doesn't purchase a book, that's not banning it. You can go buy the book yourself if you like.
That's
Okay?
correct.
A book is only banned if the government forbids it from being published or sold. That's what banned means. And it's this, again, that's incumbent upon us as speakers who are trying to convince people of, trying to convince the reasonable people, the people who are good people, but don't really understand the issues that are at stake. And
Right.
that's one of them about banning. We need to make that. And of course, the great irony here is that these people who are screaming about books being banned are the exact same people who had all of the Dr. Seuss books removed from the libraries last year.
100%.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
These are the exact same people. So
right.
We have to call them out that they're not against banning books. They are against not having the books of propaganda that they would like to in children's libraries. We have to hammer that it's the children. Obviously anyone can go buy any book they want, right? And
well, and then they want to use what really galls me, because I personally think the trans movement, not individual trans adults that are walking around minding their own business. I'm talking about the movement. I think the way they have cynically used the gay community, so gay men and lesbians, let's be very specific here, to, they've sort of glommed on like a remora, and they are acting like they're, oh, we're the same and have all the same concerns. We're part of a community, which is not true.
Nope.
And I think I've spoken with Dennis Kavanaugh, who's over in the UK and fighting for men, gay men's rights and so forth. He has said, and I agree, that this trans movement, it may well be a form of quite violent conversion therapy on actual gay or pre-gay children. Let's say pre-gay because, if they're very small, I mean, we know that there are people who know at an early age, but let's say that for the moment, because even we adults shouldn't be affirming sexuality in young children before they're capable of really, they haven't gone through puberty. So it's not our job to affirm their sexuality. If they feel a certain way, I certainly wouldn't say discriminate or, tell them anything bad, but, these kids who act a little different, they're being told you're the opposite gender when in fact, maybe they're just gay.
Yeah.
Maybe they're a lesbian. Maybe they're going to grow up and be a gay man. And so they're not even having that opportunity to figure out who they are in the, in the fullness of time. And I think it's weird and twisted and sick. And it angers me to no end when they say, most of the books that these people, these Christo-fascists want to ban are about LGBT issues. And it's like, no. That's
No.
not what they're about. And
There's no
even
connection at all.
there's no connection. And even to the extent that they are about homosexuality, it's because they're pornographic. It's not because they're just about someone who's gay. Okay. You could have a
Yeah.
book that was like so-and-so has two moms. Was it Heather Has Two Mommies, or that was a book?
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty benign. That's pretty benign. Okay. They're not talking about how they have sex. That's just talking about a different structure of a family. We're talking about graphic novels that go into details. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want the test is, how would you feel about that if it's heterosexual sex? They're heterosexual people doing those exact same activities depicted the exact same way in the graphic novel in your kid's class. How do you feel?
You know, they probably wouldn't care.
Oh God.
They probably wouldn't care. You know, I wish it weren't so. I actually wish it weren't so. Now, you know, this is something I've been toying with, Deb, and so maybe I can get your feedback on it. Talking about using rhetoric, you know, attempting to deal with some of these people. I've toyed with the idea of using the word genocide. That first of all, I think you're right. I never speak about transgender individuals ever. I'm speaking about transgender ideology, and all of the research, all of it, which we have for the last 100 years, shows that these, in boys anyway, the boys who there are two factors that go into this. These boys tend to be highly effeminate. They don't like rough and tumble. They tend to be very shy, timid. And interestingly, my research has picked up on some new studies that more than half of their mothers tend to have been diagnosed with personality disorders themselves.
65%.
It's amazing. And these particular highly effeminate boys, 95% of them end up gay, end up growing up to be homosexual. Right. The other few percent end up like Caitlyn Jenner, right? Who is still a straight man, even though he's had his genitalia, altered and removed. He's still attracted to women.
That's right.
And the other thing is that this is a certain genocide against women, because
yes, absolutely.
It's the end of women's sororities. It's the end of women's colleges. It's the end of women's sports. It's the end of Title IX. It's the end of women's spas. It's the end of women's prisons, right? It's the end of women. And and it's interesting, the focus is always on men becoming women, because we don't really care if women compete with men. It's no big deal, right? Who cares, right? The men are still going to be able to outdo the women. It's always the other way around, and it's always targeting women. Oh. And what's fascinating is the viciousness of the women who are spreading this trans ideology. It's mainly women, and the attack on femininity, the attack on the female of our species, and the glorious beauty of the female of our species. There has to be some sort of deep-seated hatred, self-hatred, misogyny against being female. That's all I can figure out. But
well, it's funny you mention it. I did a show about Mean Girls with my friend Juana Trien, and she suggested the possibility that the women who support this movement do so because here are women, not women, but like here are women, synthetic women, they can cheer for and say are pretty and all that without ever really being actually threatened by them. So in other words, they're not really competing with the guy dressing as a woman for the same mates, for the same resources. They're not really. But women competing with other women is as old as time. The concept of Mean Girls is as old as time. And when you add Instagram, perfect lifestyle and perfect everything, and before that Martha Stewart, and it's been ramping up since the 80s, the idea that being a woman is something you should be perfect at. Like you should be able to perfect your hair, your body, your nails, your skin, everything. I'm not saying men don't have their own, things going on with like, hey guys, have a perfect six pack. That's not what I'm saying. But there is an emphasis on, sort of the perfect female. And she's not just physically perfect, right? She has perfect children. She has they're honor students, and they're well put together, and they're polite, and they're this and they're that, and they're athletes, and they're, but it's on her, right? It's that they don't go to dad and go, hey dad, what's wrong with your student? What's wrong with your kid? They go to the mom. What's going on with your kid? And it's do their homework. She's also a great friend. She's loyal. She's empathetic. She's there for you when you need her. She's, there with the wine glasses or there with the Kleenex. She's together in all things. She never loses her temper, because that would make her unhinged. She doesn't think too much, because that makes her intense. There's like, it's the pressure is crazy. I remember feeling it all through my life. Now, I never had that thing of like, where I was jealous of the prettier girls. Never had that. I mean, some people have it. Thankfully, I was blessed. Didn't really have it. I was a tomboy. The way it manifested for me when I couldn't be like one of the sort of the pretty girls, whatever, was I dove into the things I was really good at. And I was really good at sports, and I was really good at, rough and tumble stuff. And I preferred it anyway. And I understood the way boys communicated. So I just hung out, cut all my hair off like the little girl in the book. And I hung out with the boys. And I'm not going to lie. There were times I thought to myself, I kind of wish I was a boy, but not literally. Not like I want my body parts to change. I just kind of wanted to be accepted by them. I wanted to be one of the guys, not one of the girls. And that lasted all the way through college, by the way, where I just really preferred male friends. But there has been this ramping up of pressure. And so here come the trans women, especially the ones who are like Dylan Mulvaney or, whatever. Like they're just over the top, the top. So on the one hand, he is giving these women permission to mock the stereotypical woman. They now have permission to say, oh, you're so great, knowing full well he's mocking these people.
Yes,
like they know it.
He's a clown.
They know it.
He's a clown.
He's a clown. So they know it, but they think, oh, I'm going to get virtue points. I'm going to be socially acceptable. I'm going to be seen as this wonderful person, while at the same time, the actual women that he's imitating are downgraded. What a perfect thing if you're one of those deeply insecure, personality disordered, envious mean girls. It's perfect for you. And any woman that speaks up on her own behalf, right? Riley Gaines or, any of these other athletes or people is like, oh my God, you're such a bigot. And now they can legitimately pick on other women, and they're not going to be seen as bad for doing it. They'll get extra brownie points for picking on other women. I'm sorry. It sounds crazy and super complex, but I've just observed in my 57 years of life that women are women's worst enemies in many, many respects. And I say that having some of the most wonderful friends who I absolutely adore, who are female, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, that's just saying. I've never really spent much time thinking about that. But it is true. Men and women in general are different psychologically in terms of their. Obviously, there are exceptions in all things, but in general, men tend to be more outward directed rather than inner directed, which does have its drawbacks.
But the relational bullying is not as pronounced in amongst men, even amongst gay men. The way they treat each other is very different. Even when they're mad at each other, it's just more externalized and internalized. There's less scheming, there's less plotting, there's less passive aggression. And I'm generalizing. It's gross generalization, but I think if I had to put my finger on why there are so many more women supporting this movement and why the mothers have so much Munchausen's by proxy with this, and I think that's what it is. I think this goes very deep into the things that we have rewarded women for and also taken away from women. And I would say it's not so much the death of women, it's the death of feminism. Feminism has reached its nadir.
Yeah.
And it's imploding on itself.
Right. If anyone can be a woman, then there's no such thing as women's rights anymore.
Thank you.
I mean, that's all. I mean, if this Dylan, I mean, he's a freak. You know, he's just a freakish clown. Can dress like a woman from the 1950s, right?
Or a 6-year-old girl.
Or a 6-year-old girl, and say, I'm a woman, then women don't exist anymore, and women don't have any rights anymore. So it's really, really important that all of these women athletes simply need to stop participating. That's one thing they could do. They could get on the starting block, and when the whistle blows, just stand there and let the guy run by himself, right? And try to get news that way. Try to get some people involved that way.
And they'll always point to, well, there was that one time that one woman beat that one trans athlete. That happened once or twice. And it's like, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
Win or lose, the females shouldn't have to go up against the biological males.
Yeah.
And the biological now, sorry, go ahead.
The other thing that I think would be nice if we could get parents to organize this is every boy on every high school campus should say he's a girl and go into the girls' bathrooms and go in girls' locker rooms, see what happens.
That's right.
I think you should get even if you got 10 or 15 conservative, or maybe not even conservative, maybe just, liberal parents who disagree with this stuff, say, look, I want you 15 boys today, because teenage boys would love this kind of prank, right? All of a sudden to say, you know what? Call me she today. I'm going in the girls' bathroom. I'm gonna and see what happens. That would be another strategy out there for those of you who are thinking in terms of tactics of trying to challenge this and stop this, because it's only going to get worse. It has to get worse before it gets better, because we still don't see any serious pushback. We see a division in certain state, certain, quote unquote red state versus blue states. We see a certain division, but there isn't an ideological pushback. And that's the root is the ideology, as opposed to chemical treatments we need to call them poisoning is what we need to do, because that's what they do. They poison the child's body. The effects are not reversible. And people just don't understand the true horror of what happens to these people. For most, in terms of the men who undergo surgery, generally they're incontinent for the rest of their life, because the muscles that control the bladder are affected by the surgery. Also, and this is the terrible, terrible thing, if teenage boys take Lupron or other hormone blockers, their testes will not develop. Neither will their penis. Their penis will remain, a child's penis, child's testicles, and they'll remain very small. And what's begun to happen? One of the people that, again, they're just not educated about this. And a lot of this has been hidden on purpose. That in Europe, it's becoming more common now, is that they will use part of a man's colon.
The colon, yeah. And that poor 18-year-old who died of E. coli because of it.
To create a faux vagina. I mean, they're using anal membrane tissue. I mean, just that alone, to think they're going to create something that resembles, a vagina is obscene. And the other thing is, of course, is these openings that are created. The body considers them to be wounds, and they will close. They will close. Men who undergo this sort of surgery have to wear dilators for the rest of their lives, and these dilators are painful. They're not, and they'll never serve the function of quote unquote normal intercourse. people don't want to talk about this. They don't want to talk. I mean, it's so unbelievably obscene.
I just can't
it's
imagine.
hard to talk about.
I can't imagine a parent, and this is the problem is, it's not there. You have one group where the parents are saying, this is my 2-year-old trans child. And that's just, I can't. Okay. We know this person is deeply disturbed. But then you have the ones where they're in middle school or above, and the parent doesn't find out about it.
Yeah.
Parent doesn't know. The kids are getting through the mail. They're able to send away and get through the mail these hormones, or they can go to Planned Parenthood and get it. And I believe now on the West Coast, I was it in Oregon or Washington recently, somebody's introduced legislation to protect the doctors and the facilities that hand out the hormones and do the surgeries without parental consent from ever being sued by anyone.
Yeah.
So they want permanent liability protection. You know who doesn't have permanent liability protection for being sued because you don't like the job they did? The people who cut your freaking hair. You could sue. I mean, you might not win, but I mean, let's say you got a really bad color job and it like hurt your scalp, or something really bad happened and your hair fell out and you were bald. You could actually go sue the salon, and you might even be able to collect, even though your hair will probably grow back and all that kind of stuff, right? These kids, and we know, we've talked to detransitioners, these kids are maimed for life. Tragically, the rates of suicide are high, and that there goes their excuse for doing it. It'll prevent suicide. No.
Doesn't.
But now there are states that want to make it so that the people who do this to them can never be held accountable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if they did it to a child without an adult's consent. And that to me is, we have reached a point where it's like, every time I think this is the worst, this is as bad as it can get. Oh, nope, there it's worse. Just not telling parents, just not even requiring the consent of parents. Yeah. That also means, by the way, as we've seen, you could have a divorced couple.
Yeah.
One part of the couple can use the child as revenge on the other person in this way. We've seen it done. We've already seen that boy in Texas.
Another thing that is going on in terms of parental non-consent is that now under California law, this is part of the reason I spoke up, is that we are now operating under legal compelled speech. So at my school site, there are 2 children that I know of, both in kindergarten, who parents are cross-dressing them and sending them to school, and have asked that the other teachers and children call them by what are inappropriate pronouns. Right. It's a little boy dressed as a girl, and they want you to say she and her. And if you don't, right, then you are legally now you are harassing the child. You are creating a hostile. The legal term is you're creating a hostile learning environment, and you can be disciplined for that. And that really was the final nail in the coffin for my teaching career, when they are forcing compelled speech for which you can be punished. Now, the Thomas More Society has a federal lawsuit against Escondido over this exact same issue, that we're now so it isn't just your own child that's being affected. Now it's the other children around them that must obey, that must bow down. And again, in terms of getting it to children, here's another headline. I like to keep my little library of headlines up to. Here's another one here.
Teacher caught berating kids who object to LGBTQ lesson with severe threat. You don't have a job. I heard that. Okay. I played that video, so that's real. I mean, I heard her talking. Now, this was, right. I believe this was this recent or during COVID, and they just unearthed it?
I haven't done a lot of research.
There were two, but I've heard them, and it is amazing. To hear a teacher just like, you don't have a choice. You have to listen to this.
Choice.
Actually, ironically, yes, they do. They have to be physically in the school building or they're truant, but nobody can compel you to sit in your seat and listen to something that you find offensive, as long as you're not disruptive.
Yeah.
Now, you can't like pitch a fit and throw things across the room, but you can get up and politely excuse yourself from the classroom and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to need to excuse myself, but this violates my conscience, my beliefs, my values, the reality, everything.
You'd really have to be a brave, educated
And that's
young person.
And that's the point is I've seen a lot of people say to me online, they're like, well, so tell the kid to leave or tell the kid to this, or just tell your kids at home to do. I'm like, do you know what kind of position? First of all, most people say this, obviously either don't have kids or the kids are really young and they think they can talk to older kids this way and this will work, or they're babies or whatever, or they're just delusional because you're asking parents, you're putting parents in a position where they have to now tell the kid, don't trust the adults where I send you every day. Don't trust them. I'm sending you into an unsafe, hostile place. Cope. Oh, by the way, here's how you cope. So you're now going to like put your own relationship with your child on the line. They're going to look at you and go, and why are you sending me there? So your credibility is trashed. Either they think you're full of crap because why would you send them there every day? That doesn't compute. Yeah. Or they're going to think you're horrible. What are you doing? Send me to this place every day. So this is not a thing you want to do. Second thing is, hello, we pay for it.
Yeah.
We pay for it. Yeah. So you're asking parents to basically bend the knee, kiss the ring, and take it up the you-know-where.
Yep. It really is what it's all about. It's all about power and control. So, when I spoke up at the board with my 60 seconds,
with your 60 seconds,
and my little flag that I didn't wave at all, the school board meetings occur after 5 o'clock. So the school offices, upstairs, they're all closed. And so I went to work. That was on a Tuesday evening. And I went to work the next day, showed up, opened the door and having the kids come in and everything. And my administrator shows up, bless her heart, looking very serious and wants me to leave the room immediately. And I think she was trying to get me before class had started so that she could say that there weren't children present when I was removed from the classroom. I mean, there's something fishy going on. So I said to my principal, well, I can't, legally, I cannot leave the room with the children unsupervised. I'm legally responsible for them. And so I can't just walk out. Right. And she's, oh yeah, that's right. So I said, if just ask another teacher upstairs, somebody who's certified to come down.
Right.
So she did. And then we went upstairs and there was a big hulking brute of a gentleman and he puts his hand out, And I said, generally when men extend their hands to each other, it's generally out of benevolence and goodwill. And I really don't think that's what you have in mind for me. So he was a little shocked that I wouldn't shake his hand. I wasn't rude. I just said, it's what you're doing is hypocritical. Anyway, so I sat down. And so then they read the letter that I was now permanently removed from. Now, when they read these letters, you are not told who has made the complaint. You are not told the nature of the complaint. You are simply told that you have been placed on administrative leave and an investigation will be conducted. Now, this is all done to ambush you because later on you will be called into HR, at which point, they've done some investigating and you're walking into it blind, whatever it was. So what I find interesting is that the offices were closed, and this was before 8 o'clock. The next day, I was removed from the classroom before 8 o'clock. So no complaint could have been filed. Someone had to have been up late putting this together. And then later on, so he said, there's been a complaint filed against you. Well, when I went into HR and to sit down with, the head of HR, then they tell you the complaint. The complaint was hate speech at my place of work, and the sign, basically. I mean, he didn't say it was what I said.
At your place of work.
At place of work. So, so I looked at him. I said, well, I was a private citizen going to a public meeting.
That's right.
The school board administrative offices are not my place of work. And I said, second of all, hate speech is not a crime. There is no crime called hate speech. There are hate crimes, which are real crimes, which have an added layer of intent to terrorize. I said, this is complete nonsense. What I said wasn't intended to terrorize anybody. And certainly the sign I had was just for gay pride trans flags. And I didn't even, I only held it up when someone wanted to see it. So, but then I noticed these complaints were filed the day after I was removed. One was filed late that evening, the day after, and the other was filed 2 days later. So there are issues of due process I'm having lawyers look into.
Wow.
And then well, I don't want to go into that right now. It's too much. But my again, as I said, my administrator went out and put out a letter in speaking about hate speech and so forth and so on.
That's right.
And if I could just take a minute, if you don't mind, Deb, to clarify.
Absolutely.
I think it's important that people, whenever they speak out, that they're careful about what they say. I never attack individuals. I never disparage anybody's character. I might hypothesize as to motivation and that sort of thing, but that sort of thing it distracts from the issue. So in California, under California Assembly Bill 2282, Section 1, it reads that this legislation is not intended to criminalize the placement or display. Yes, this legislation is not intended to criminalize or. Boy, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to get it one more time. This legislation is not intended to criminalize the placement or display of the ancient swastika symbols that are associated with Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, and they are considered symbols of peace. This particular law, it says that the intent of this law is to criminalize the placement or display of the Nazi Iron Cross, also known as the Nazi swastika, for the purpose of terrorizing a person. So simply the display of a swastika in and of itself means nothing. It is not considered hate speech. You would have to use it in the act of trying to terrorize someone. And another thing, this is really interesting, that I have my little Native American reference.
Yeah.
Guys right here. Okay. So
I've known about that one, the Native American one.
Yeah, so there it is right there. Okay. It's just
exactly.
And even this is not the German Iron Cross. Okay. These are just lines. So the German Iron Cross, we have to drive a conceptual wedge between the idea of the German Iron Cross and the swastika as a cultural symbol. And I dropped my law, so I'm gonna duck down and get my papers back.
That's fine. No, but that's really important because, like I said, in a world where, everyone I don't like is a Nazi. It's and those of us who are trying to speak up against people who are actual totalitarians. Yeah.
Well, there's also another irony that I've pointed out to the HR, and that is technically I'm not white. I am registered. I am fully registered with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I actually have a tribal number from I'm a member of the Nor El Mook Band of the Wintu tribe of Northern California. for which I receive a governmental check every year for about $2.
Oh, wow.
For land that is curated by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So technically, I'm an American Indian, not white. Also, then there's another thing people have to realize about speaking at boards. And again, this is California law. Let's see, what is the? It's always Assembly Bill. Title 5, local agencies. It reads: the legislative body of any local agency shall not prohibit public criticism of the policies, procedures, programs, or services of the agencies, or of the acts or omissions of the legislative body. So when you are at a public meeting, you can say anything you want.
And I'm pretty sure they're not allowed to fire you as retribution.
Yeah, there's that also. You know, one thing that people, I don't think your audience knows, but they tried to remove me from the meeting. One of the administrators, he was foaming at the mouth. They know who I am, and they know I'm not afraid of them. And there were 5 police officers at this meeting, and he rounded up 3 of them and brought them over.
Ray, you're so dangerous with your 1 minute talk. I almost feel compelled to show it now.
Okay,
now that you
go ahead, you can show it.
I'm going to show Ray's part in this, because you were at, I think, 44, right? Let's see. Let me get this right.
I was at 44.
Because what we're talking about, they had to get 4 police officers. I am going to have to show this. I hope this comes up right. Let's see.
I start out by saying that 2 + 2 is 4.
Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah. Did you? Oh, that's right. You did. Okay. Where is it? Here we go. All right. So here we're going to hear Ray. Now I tried to make it big, but I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see if this will work.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
We are using the mute button. Okay. And so we're going to continue with Ray Sheldon.
They got your name wrong. Ray Sheldon.
Yep.
It's not moving. Why is it not moving? Come on, move.
Yeah, it is. I think it is.
All right, hang on. I go back to 44. All right, here we go.
Cheryl?
So she's being ejected.
Cheryl?
So it's going, but they're trying to get her to leave.
Oh wait, you were at 44, right?
Right.
So
I'm
that's
at 44.
Before. Hold on. So she was. Why is this not going backwards? Go back. Okay, 43. I'm sorry. There you are. Okay, 40. Okay.
See all the police officers right there? That's not me. They're trying to remove her.
Why is there no sound? It's like 1 minute there's sound, and
we are using the mute button, and so we're going to continue with Ray Sheldon.
Yeah, just let it run.
Ray Sheldon.
Yeah, she's the only thing you can hear is what is at the speaker's microphone, and she's muted me. So,
one moment, please.
Yeah,
I push a button.
Go ahead.
Here we go.
2 + 2 = 4. The world is not flat. Boys have penises, girls have vaginas. Gender is binary and cannot be changed. Biology is not bigotry. Heterosexuality is not hate. Gender confusion and gender delusion are deep psychological disorders. No caring profession or loving parent would ever support the chemical poisoning or surgical mutilation of a child's genitalia. Transgender ideology is anti-gay. It is anti-woman, and it is anti-human. It wants to take away women's sports, women's rights, women's achievements. It is misogyny writ large. And I can say this also as a gay man. The gay people...
That's time, sir.
They cut me off.
And they cut you off. Of course they did.
So
They cut you
that
off.
was my hate speech. That was my shirt. For
So
those
hateful.
so hateful.
Don't you agree, audience? Was that so hateful that what he said? He literally listed like true statement. The earth is not flat. Water is wet. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Like, oh my God, hate speech.
So my maybe it was my T-shirt that I was wearing that triggered them.
Biology?
It says "Make biology great again."
How about just make biology again
Yeah.
and not some other kind of ology? I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
ideology.
So that was, that was my hate speech right there. The venom, the venom from the other side is
horrible.
just unbelievable. But when you're in a public meeting, you can say anything you want, offensive or whatever you want. There's no such thing as hate speech legally.
That's right.
Hate speech just means speech that offends somebody and they don't like it. So that's all.
And that was why the First Amendment was put into the Bill of Rights. Is it's not to protect speech everyone agrees with, it's to protect speech that is controversial or that criticizes your government, and your school board is government, as is the school itself. So I think I'm sure you've had many people since this happened say you're a hero and it's so amazing. But I'm going to be that weird person that says, I'm so glad what you did. And I admire you to death. But I stopped short of saying hero because it makes other people think they can't do it too. In other words, like that you have to have some kind of special magical quality of heroism when you're just a caring teacher.
That is a great
cares
point.
You're just a person. You're just a person like everybody else. Ray has the same ability that everybody else here has to just stand up and speak the truth because he cares about the truth. And I think if we keep looking for, James Lindsay put it so well last week. He said, we have a tendency to have this messianic a view of problem solving on the in the center right, or the whatever's not the left. Let's put it that way. Okay. Mm-hmm. We tend to look at like, this elected person is going to save me, or this hero is going to step up and speak on my behalf, or I finally found the person who tells it like I'm thinking it. It's like, how about you tell it like you're thinking it? You use your voice. This is the United States of America. We don't need kings and heroes and figureheads and people to speak for us. We are one of the only nations, I think we are the only nation on earth that has the freedom of speech to the level that we have. So be your own hero, be your child's hero.
That is great. Be your own hero. If 10 other teachers from this district, which is quite large, got up and did the same thing, this nonsense would stop.
Stops when we want it to stop.
It stops when we want it to stop. It stops when, there's nothing, there's nothing heroic by saying 2 + 2 is 4, right?
If we've come to that, then we're really actually no better than the people trying to shove this garbage down our throats. We're just the opposite. We're like the yang to their yin in the sense that they're total totalitarian power, and we've bent the knee and we're now serfs. If we have to go, Ray is a hero for saying 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, come on, people. We can do better than that.
Yeah.
It's not heroic. It's like Paul Rossi said on that one show. He said, it's not brave. It's not courage. Courage is just fear of a different outcome.
Yeah, it's honesty. It's honesty.
It's honesty. When we are more afraid of what our children and our children's children are going to say when they look back. If there's any comparison to Nazis, it ought to be this. What will our legacy be? Look at the German people and the people of Europe who just, waved their little flags and did their little thing, or didn't say anything until it was too late. Their legacy, tragically, is shameful. It's one of, I didn't say a word. I didn't speak up because I didn't think it affected me. It was none of my business. And then, oops, it was. Okay, do you want the history books someday to be written that you didn't either? And then people say, well, I can't go to the school board and do what Ray did because I'll lose my job and I have to feed my family, or I can't do this because of that. Well, as you said, Ray, it doesn't get 10 people together.
Yeah. And you don't have to. Just in casual whenever, obviously you go through life, right? You talk to people.
That's right.
I talk to people.
Just tell the truth.
I go to the grocery store. I talk to the clerk behind the counter. I go to the bookstore. I do all those things. And when you encounter irrationality and it's appropriate, right? Obviously, you don't want to be inappropriate. And things come up, you can just say, no, I don't agree. You don't have to explain. You don't have to justify. You can just say, I don't really agree with that. And I just want you to know that. It's this thing about pronouns is, again, another one of those intellectual, conceptual tools that we need to develop when someone says to use a particular pronoun. I always, whenever someone emails me and they have their pronouns beneath it, I always say, why is this here? Why is this beneath your signature line? It has nothing to do with your business, has nothing to do with why you're contacting me. It seems to be an ideological statement and entirely inappropriate to our commercial or personal exchange. And then I go on to point out that we don't get our own prepositions. We don't get our own, if I say to you, I'm sitting here in a chair, right? And I say, well, you don't get to say that I'm sitting in the chair. I want you to say that I'm sitting under the chair, because that's how I identify. I identify as that I'm sitting under the chair. So you have to say I'm under the chair, not on the chair. And you just have to say, language, pronouns, adverbs, nouns, those are part of a communication system that does not belong to you. And, you're free to misuse it as you wish, but you do not have the right to force the rest of us to misuse it along with you. Now, of course, there's the issue of being polite with someone and not, in the social setting, if someone is sincere, one can be polite, but you can still be polite and refuse. You can say, well, you're free to do that. It's perfectly fine, but I'm still not going to refer to you as, a woman when you're not, any more than I would refer to you as an alien or as, a Chinese woman.
Well, what's so sad though, is for so many years, one of the goals of progressivism, feminism, and different isms was to remove some of the social rules around how you dress or, what your name is or whatever. And what I don't understand, and I don't think I'll ever understand, is why isn't it enough to loosen the restrictions around a man wants to wear makeup and he wants to wear a dress and he wants to wear high heels and he wants to do these things and he wants to walk around dressed as, like, he wants to walk around in drag or, whatever. Okay. Now he's an adult. And if the people he's doing business with and the people he's friends with and the people who are interacting with him, like, don't have an issue with it, like, why would it be a problem to say he? Like, and if he looks so much like a woman and people slip and say she because that's what comes out of their mouth, I mean, that happens to me all the time. I mean, I call Bucky and I call Sarah she. Okay, because that's how they look to me. That's my convenience. I forget, right? So it's convenient for me, and that's what I use. It's not because I genuinely think they're really a man and a woman. And they know that, and everybody's cool with it. It's like, you don't call me my name. I call me what you want. But no one has ever said, call me this.
Yeah.
But why is it automatically so offensive? Look, why do you have to be the thing? Why can't you just be free to dress how you want to dress? What's the problem?
Yeah. Again, it's just control. It's an issue of I call it the totalitarian impulse. And unfortunately, the last generation or two have been deeply, deeply affected by the totalitarian impulse which is not just to control. The totalitarian impulse totalitarianism doesn't work by controlling. It works by terrorizing. It works by crushing. Yes. It works by random violence. Not people have to live in terror under totalitarianism. So there has to be an unexpected danger at all times. So if you slip up and use the wrong pronoun, or you don't say plus plus AQ, you know, after LGBT, you know, just as an aside, Deb, there is a great comedy routine. I wish I could remember the gentleman's name. And it's very funny. It involves, he's telling a story about LGBTQ, and he refers to the G is driving a car, trying to make a trip, and the L is sitting next to him. And of course, the B is in the back, right? In the back seat. And they all just wish, you know, the T is on the side of the road, you know, trying to hitch a ride. And they don't want to let the T into the car. It's really quite funny, you know, in terms of that. But then another, because I like comedy. There's another comedian who says LGBTQW. You know, when I was a kid, we just had 3 letters, FAG.
That's right. Right. And I mean, it's, I just don't get it. Like, and women fought for so long to be able to dress any way they want. I mean, remember Fran Lebowitz famously dressed pretty much like a man in a men's suit, men's clothes, wore her hair not long, not short, but kind of, you know, mannish, never wore makeup or anything. Well, we knew she was a woman, but she wanted to dress that way and not be judged and not have anybody think any differently because she just wanted her talent and her, so fine. Like, why? That was the goal, right? It just like, I'm going to be the version of a woman that I want to be, or you're going to be the version of a man that you want to be. But we didn't have to literally become the stereotype of the other thing, because the whole point was to smash stereotypes. And then we kind of like got there and immediately like, yay, nope. It's like that was 5 seconds of enlightenment, and then now we're backwards.
Because it was never about enlightenment for most of these people. It's always been ever since well, you know, the intellectual history of all of this goes back to the 1840s and 1850s, when all of the young intellectuals in America went to German universities to study under Hegel and all those various related philosophies and philosophers, and then they brought it back to America. And then that was a bad idea. It was a very bad idea. And then that's when you see the birth of quote unquote progressivism, which I will not call it progressivism. That's another divide. It should always be called regressivism. But that's when we saw the birth of progressivism and education and Dewey. And they were all followers of this sort of Hegelian influenced philosophies. That was really the true turning point. But all this talk of enlightenment and freedom in the, you know, after the 2 world wars, was never about freedom. It was all about destruction. It was all about tearing down. There was never a vision. None of these people ever had a vision of anything good. It was always some form of destruction. And so now we've reached almost the end of it. We've gone through, I mean, there's been some advances, of course, women's being able to control their reproductive systems, and
get credit cards. I'm kidding. In my lifetime, that's scary.
And you know, gay people can live their lives as they wish, but you know,
maybe, unless the trans lobby gets its wishes. It's a crime that you don't want to sleep with one of them. I mean, they would like that to be true. They would really like that. What they do with what they do to both gay men and women, but mostly to lesbians, it's absolutely horrific.
It is.
And I just, like, I have no words. It makes me so mad. What they're doing to all of our kids and to adults that I care about, and so on, and just to reality itself. As you said, it's terrorizing people out of just telling the truth, and
not a complicated truth. I mean, these are not complicated truths.
No, and you know, the thing is that we really have to start what you pointed out about they went to Germany and they brought these things back. I think part of why they brought these things back is each of them had a kind of insecurity about America. America, especially at that time, was rougher around the edges than Europe. Europe has thousands of years of history. It has a certain polish that conceals, they spray perfume to cover the body odor. It's similar with their culture and their so-called enlightenment. It covers a lot of the, colonialism and serfdom and horrible treatment of, people who are poor from people who are not. And I think that there have been groups of Americans that have gone to Europe and said, oh, it's so much better and smarter and more enlightened here. And they bring things back, these pseudo-intellectual theories, whatever, and think this is how we're going to make rough and tumble, frontiery, individualistic America into the new Europe or the more enlightened Europe. But it's a kind of insecurity. And what they were was intolerant of America, what makes America special, and a little rough around the edges, but that's okay. I saw it when I went to live in Europe. I was told by people, don't wear tennis shoes. People know you're American. And it wasn't like that when they were afraid of getting in some terrorist attack or whatever. It was like, don't let on that you're American and only speak German and keep your mouth shut and don't let people hear an American accent. If they catch you, tell them you're Canadian because people think Canadians are nicer. But don't let on you're American because then you're so uncouth and you're this and you're that. And I was like, are you for real?
Yeah, you're not you're not sophisticated.
I'm not sophisticated enough. I'm going to be living there for a year. I do speak the language. Like, if they're going to treat me like I'm not sophisticated enough to be here just because they find out I'm American, and I had Americans telling me that, like, why are you so insecure about your own country, fix yourself. Like, you don't go to another country and then try to transplant those ideas. And then for God's sake, don't call everyone else a colonist. You're a colonist. You're colonizing these children's brains with this pseudoscientific bunk that's like a cult. You're colonizing American values and actual Enlightenment ideas with regressive, retro, classist, sexist bullshit. and then it's like, you're the ones doing it. The rest of us are actually the liberals. We're actually the tolerant ones.
We're the true liberals. The true liberals, yeah.
And they're calling us Nazis.
Well, we'll have to have a show on what American culture truly is, where it truly comes from, and why it is truly great. And that involves the DEI, the diversity, equity.
Yeah, we could do a whole show on that. We could do a whole show on that, Ray. I'm so glad that you
as I call it, divide, exclude, and indoctrinate. That's
yes.
D.
And
that's
social
DEI.
emotional alert is SE, and SEL is socially engineered. I mean, how many people even notice that they changed student to learner and teacher to educator?
Educators. I hate that word, educators.
So do I.
It's just to be sophisticated.
That's it. That's what I'm saying. They're so insecure about basic terminology. We're going to make everything more complicated. Even simple words like oriented, they're like orientated. I'm like, that's not a word.
Yeah. Or they say share out. And when we have teacher meetings, you don't share, you share out.
Right. Like, you reach out. Reach out. If you have any questions, reach out. This is me. In my mind, anytime someone says reach out, I'm seeing this.
Right.
How about just call me?
Right. They do that with emails.
Contact me, get in touch.
With emails, right? With emails, I reached out to, right? Because that gives you a moral superiority rather than just say, oh, I emailed him or I telephoned. Oh no, I reached out, right? And then you didn't respond, right? So
I'm a nicer person than
exactly.
you. It all comes down to that. It all comes down to we're all in competition of who's the nicest, kindest, bestest person. Yep. Meanwhile, the people who proclaim their niceness to the heavens are some of the most intolerant, bossy, bullying, narcissistic a-holes that you're ever going to meet. And the people who just write you a quick note and be like, hey, can you just drop off the blah, blah, blah. You didn't say good morning.
Yeah.
And you didn't put emojis in your message and you didn't reach out. And I'm just so, I'm so hurt.
Yeah.
I can't.
So,
but anyway,
So just to let your listeners know well, it's not the end of the saga for me anyway, but you know, so there were 2 complaints filed against me, but they forgot something, and that is that 2 can play at that game. Okay, 2 can play at the file a complaint game. 2 can play at the game, file for slander, file for workplace retaliation, file for violation of due process, and so forth and so on. So now now they're on the receiving end, and
good.
We're just waiting for it all to flesh out. I'm assuming I'm assuming that they'll just wait it out. Just school's out on June 9th, and that's my retirement date. I'm assuming they'll just let the clock run out, and that way they'll have gotten.
Of course they will.
They'll have gotten rid of me, and they'll also have not had to. When you're placed on leave, it's not considered a disciplinary action. I said that wrong.
Right.
That way you can't have a complaint, right?
Right.
So I think that they're just going to run out the clock. We'll find out. But
good way to go out, though. Good way to go out. I mean, at least just standing up for what's right. I just think how shameful to these people. Any of you who are watching, if you want to send a letter to his principal or any of the people involved, and you want to you want to do that sort of thing,
let me know what. It's the first letter. It's the first letter of the person's name, then their last name, at GUSD.net. So
that's it. GUSD.net.
Any teacher, any supervisor, any administrator, the more pressure you put on that we can put on them,
and you just go to their website and look up, who's on the staff. And they should feel the heat. They should understand that there are people even on the other side of the country who are just disgusted with their behavior and their treatment of this good teacher. Because even if somebody disagrees with you, Ray, I thought that the whole point, remember, they're constantly selling these books that they say that we're burning and banning. Right. They're constantly saying, it is so important for intellectual curiosity and integrity that everybody be heard. We need to include all voices. Sorry, I always go into my Valley Girl voice, and people have commented. Some people are like, haha, that's funny. Other people are like, you have to stop doing that. I'm like, I can't help it. When I hear these people in my head, I have to change their voice to something annoying, because I can't hear them speaking in regular voice because they're ridiculous to me.
They don't speak in a regular voice.
And they don't. They have an affect. It may not be that affect, but they have some form of affect.
Well, they know they need to know that they're being watched. They need to know that they don't have the moral high ground. And this is just a small skirmish in a much, much larger battle, and we won't see effects immediately. Think this social change will take time, and it's generally incremental. So even no matter what you do, wherever you are, when you're just honest, that's all it requires. It's just simple honesty. The effect is cumulative. So know that when you do speak out, you really aren't alone. And
every time you do, you make it safer for somebody else to do it as well. And you're not going to be alone for long. It doesn't take many people. I mean, one person they might say is a crazy person. 2 is a crazy person with a friend. By the time you get to 3 people, though, it's harder to ignore you. And the other thing I would encourage people to do, if you're uncomfortable going to school board meetings for a variety of reasons, I understand that. First thing, if you're going to go, I said this today on my Twitter space, ask yourself one question. There are 2 questions. First, what is my desired outcome? You really know what that is. And then ask yourself, if I don't get my desired outcome by this means, what will I do? Because you really have to connect the dots. Like, is this even the right avenue for my speaking out? Should I maybe be writing op-ed? Should I be writing letters? Should I be calling legislators? Should I be talking to other parents and socializing this idea around and getting a group of people to do something? So while the impulse is there, and a lot of people go to your school board, really think about what is my desired outcome, because you want to make sure operationally you're being smart, you're being strategic, there are trade-offs to everything you do, and you want to make sure you act wisely. And then the other thing I would recommend is, I love what you did where you got up and just listed facts. Okay, that's a great approach. Another great approach is to ask questions. So you can get very far with people. If you were to say, I'm genuinely confused in our society or in our state or in our district, whatever, the students under the age of 18 are not permitted to, and you can list all the things they're not, it's very effective, all the things they're not allowed to do without parental consent. You can go get yourself a list and just stand there at the school board or at a microphone or whatever and read them off. But for some reason, my child in this state, district, etc., can obtain, without my knowledge or consent, experimental medical chemical treatments that will permanently alter their physical that will stop their physical development and or permanently alter their bodies. I don't understand the difference. Please explain it to me.
It damages their entire endocrine system.
Everything. But you could, that's very effective to juxtapose the many things they're not allowed to get. They can't read Dr. Seuss. They can't drive a car. They can't get a tattoo. They can't pierce their ears. They can't, I mean, the list is long. It's very, very long. And you could be very effective to spend, 30 seconds of your 1 minute reading such a list and then saying, but they can do this. And I just don't understand how they can consent to that, but they can't consent to this. Can you guys explain it to me?
Another thing at school board and other public meetings is you don't have to get up and speak and identify yourself. You can just carry a little sign, and then just a little sign. And a lot of people do that without, because when you get up and speak and you identify yourself, right, then you're making yourself a target. You could be doxxed. People could go after you. But you can sit quietly in the audience and just hold a little sign. At the last meeting, there were a lot of signs that said, "Our children are not your experiment." Something to that effect. So you can still go and express yourself without without identifying who you are.
That's right. You can also try positive pressure, and that's something that we haven't done enough of, which is to show up at the school library with a donation box full of books that counter the information in those books we don't like, and say, I really would like, in the interest of free speech and inclusiveness and diversity and everything, here's a donation free of charge of these books we would like put in the library. Would you please include them in the library? And here's the funny thing. They have every right to say no because they're curating, they're selecting their collection. But if they do and use that excuse, you've got them, because they're saying, so you've curated these books with graphic porn and graphic imagery, and it's not about just including all the books. It's not just about, we got to have all the books so the students can learn whatever they're interested in. So if a student's interested in this book, for example, and you hold up another book about, something that they don't like, and here's the Dr. Seuss books back again. Well, why is this a problem?
Another thing that is interesting in California, these I forget the name of the book company, but it's like Glisten, or I don't know. It's a gay group, and they have all these they mainly focus on transgender stuff, not gay stuff. And they purchase books. It's a nonprofit. They raise money and they purchase books. In California, if you donate a book to the library must accept it.
Interesting.
They must. They cannot refuse it.
If you're watching or listening from California.
So these pedophile trans groups have raised money, and then they send these books like this one. That was a little too fast. They send it to the public library. I mean, to the school libraries, and the school libraries have to accept it. So they use that particular law. The reason I'm sure the law, there has to be a reason that the law is written the way it is, that public schools cannot refuse donations. But I don't know what
They
it
don't
is.
have to shelve them, though.
They don't have to shelve them. That's true.
So that's the thing, is they got to take them, but they might turn around and do who knows what with them. So, but the point is, you can do this. They have to accept them. They're going to have to do something with them. And you can absolutely check back, see if it's on the shelf, ask them if it's going to be put on the shelf. If they say no, ask why. But I think we need to find creative ways rather than just saying, get it out, it's bad, you're being bad, this is terrible, you people are hurting my kids, whatever. All true, but that's not the point. The point is, as you stated at the outset, these are very manipulative, creative, antisocial people. And so I'm not suggesting we be manipulative, because that means you're lying. But I think it's important to recognize that if you're dealing with disingenuous people coming in bad faith who are manipulative, you have to be very creative. You have to be strategic, and you can't just, I wish you could just say no, but that's why people manipulate, is to put you in a box so that you can't, so that no is never going to be the easy answer or an answer at all. They're going to make it nearly impossible for you to say no. So you have to come up with other ways to make them back themselves into a corner and expose themselves. Because remember, the solution to this is that for the mass of people who are currently quiet, to stop being quiet. And I truly believe that will happen when more of them see the unforced errors, or the forced errors at this point, the errors of the people you're fighting. Not when they hear you say, no, I'm not going to convince anybody. If you're not already listening to me, you're not already pretty much in agreement with me, I'm not going to be the person that's going to change your mind. I'm here to empower those of you who already do agree to join me, and let's be a force multiplier and all do this thing. Because when people see more people doing it, makes it safer for them. And then if we teach each other how to do these strategies and ask these questions and make the other guys say and do dumb stuff, right? Then the person who's cowering is going to go, wait a minute, that person's an idiot. Wait, they're a total hypocrite. Like the blind lady. That was effective. Using that, we should be using that. That should go viral. People should be like, wait a minute. She blinded herself, and the audience, they didn't laugh at her, but they cheered the doctor who said she was nuts. You put that against what they did to you. So this is bad, but this is fine.
We'll see. We'll see how things come out.
Well, I hope it goes well for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So we should probably wrap it up. I've loved visiting with you. I've loved talking.
I know,
with
but
you.
we've been on for 2 hours, and I greatly appreciate the time.
I love your spirit. I need a light. I'm really dark in here. It's
okay. Then they maybe won't recognize you. I'm kidding. They'll see your picture on the picture up front. So I encourage everyone. I pinned the Glendale School Board meeting to the top of this if you want to watch it. I would encourage you to write to the people that are being jerks to Ray. not just for Ray's sake, right? It's also for the other teachers. It's also for the other teachers. Somebody just said, red man, look, you look more like an Indian. We're being so inappropriate. Inappropriate.
I'm an Indian.
I know. No, you're a Native American.
I'm a homosexual Native Indigenous American. So
there you go. So they can't pick on you.
There's no white
supremacy. You pass as white. So, all right. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. Please like, share, and if you're not already subscribe to the channel. And I will be making more content. Maybe Ray will be back with us, and we will do the panel discussion hopefully next week, but we'll see. It depends on people's schedules, and it is tough to get everybody, the stars aligned, but we'll work on it. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and I will see you next time. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. Appreciate it.